Welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I am your host, Andrew, and with me tonight is Jason and Joe. We are all back together for the first time. Jason has returned from the 10-day IL retroactive back to January 17th. How are you guys doing tonight?
Definitely feeling much better, and the wife is feeling better. So glad to be back with you live instead of trying to keep up and doing a chat.
Hey, you did pretty well the other night with it. I got to give you that. It is tough, though, to just do the chat. How are you doing tonight, Joe?
Doing
Joe, you
pretty
still there?
good. Can't complain too much.
All
Other
right.
than the Irish are losing pretty bad to Duke right now. That's about
Coach K. Sorry, you had to know that was coming. All right, guys, what
yeah.
are you drinking tonight? What are you drinking,
I'm
Joe?
sticking with my Evan Williams 1789 Coke. So I'm gonna stick with that.
No Mountain Dew tonight.
No. Went the other way this time.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. What do you got, Jason?
Yeah, so as we all know, Wednesday is February 2nd or Groundhog Day. And I have a whiskey from, I believe it was pronounced Wiggle Distillery. It's out near Pittsburgh. And this is called Phil's Shadow. It is a collaboration with Punxsutawney Phil, the most famous groundhog in the world. And it's a rye whiskey that was finished in maple syrup barrels. So it's got a little bit of a sweet flavor. It's a little smooth. It's not as smooth as some of the other whiskeys I've had, but it's pretty solid, and a little tribute here for our the big day on Wednesday for Punxsy Phil.
All right, and will he see his shadow this year, or are we gonna have an early spring? I am okay if he sees his shadow, and we have another 6 weeks of winter because the snow so far has not been adequate enough yet for me yet. And before you keep shaking your head there, Jason, keep in mind my kids are 9 and 10, or 8 and 9, and we'll have to play in the snow. My God, yeah. Well, he'll be 10 in May, so Jesus.
Yeah, I'm fine with getting the warmer weather sooner and getting that baseball weather back.
Well, yeah, I can't argue with that. Can't argue with that.
Won't do us any good to get the weather back if they don't make a deal.
Well, there's also that too. So, guys, tonight I am drinking a Golden Road Brewing Mango Cart, the Mango Wheat Ale. I can't remember if I drank this one over the summer or not, but solid wheat ale. It's a little bit sweet, but it's very tasty.
That is really delicious. That's one of my favorites, I think.
All right. So let's get started. Before we hit the NL West, we're going to start with the Hall of Fame tonight. And after the BBWAA last year said nobody makes it in, we did have one player make it in, and it was on his first ballot. David Ortiz was elected with 77.9% of the vote, so a little bit over the 75% threshold. Big Poppy is the second player who's played DH to make it, I believe the first primary DH, because I believe Edgar Martinez also played infield before they moved him to DH. So Poppy would be the first primarily DH only player to make it into the Hall of Fame. Some notable denials. Barry Bonds, 66% on his final ballot. Roger Clemens, 65.2% on his final ballot. Kurt Schilling, 58.6% on his final ballot. And then Slammin' Sammy, only 18.5% on his final ballot. So before we look at the other guys who aren't knocked out for good, do you guys think the baseball writers got this one correct? Joe, what do you think?
I don't know. I find it hard to believe that Poppy was able to get in on the first shot as a primary DH. It's groundbreaking. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, that just seemed to kind of surprise me just a little bit. I think, um, to see Roland's numbers where they are, already you know, 5 ballots in, that's positive news, I think, if you're a Roland guy. I'm not surprised by Sammy. I mean, Sammy has basically been, you know, ostracized, for lack of a better word, by the Cub organization. So I'm not surprised that the writers feel the same way.
Helps
I'm
if
not
you
really
unmute
sure if they
yourself.
got it right or not.
Yeah. It helps if you unmute yourself. Jason, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm kind of disappointed this year. If you're going to have David Ortiz, I I think it's a shame to not also include Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Kurt Schilling. Um, David Ortiz, while he may never have tested positive, he was linked, he was named. I believe at one point he was actually suspended for, I believe it ended up being some random medicine or something like that. But to not have a player like Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens in the Hall of Fame, knowing that, yes, they were in the steroid era, but baseball turned a blind eye to it. Baseball and the commissioners turned that blind eye to that entire era. So, how can the writers focus on that? I don't know, like, especially after the strike shortened 94 season, you know, they look to get rid of, they just wanted baseball to come back. So I don't know. It just doesn't sit with me that you have Poppy in, but Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling out. Now, I get Kurt Schilling said that he didn't want to be in there, which is probably why he lost ballots. But looking at the numbers, he should be in the Hall of Fame. And I actually thought Scott Rowland was going to get a higher percentage this time around, too.
Yeah, so Roland's an interesting case. I'm going to touch on Roland in a second. I do think we are going to see him get in now that he's up to this, now that he's over the 60% threshold. But I could see a scenario where he won't make it, and I'll explain that in a minute. So here's the thing with Bonds and Sosa and Clemens. I think you're right. Schilling, I think, shot himself in the foot. I think the moment he said that, the baseball writers were like, okay, cool. That gives me a vote I can give to somebody else. As far as Bonds and Clemens and Sosa go, so here's the thing. Steroids have been banned by baseball since 1991. Whether they were testing for it or not, they've been banned for that long. Yes, Poppy did. He was a part of a group of players that were tested for different substances. They never specified what the substances were, and MLB has come out and said that some of the substances that they were testing for are legal substances now, which leads me to believe that possibly something like marijuana might be on there. So, Jason, I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying about Poppy. Joe, I was surprised he made it as a first ballot candidate. I never thought we were going to see I never thought we were going to see a DH be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Frankly, I'm still shocked by it. The only DH I can think of that we should ever see as a first ballot Hall of Famer is Shohei Ohtani if he continues at the torrid pace he did last year. But that'll be because he's a fantastic pitcher as well as a fantastic hitter. So, but that's the thing. Steroids have been banned since 91. They all knew. It's the same thing that I said with Pete Rose when we had that lively debate on does Pete Rose belong in the Hall of Fame. Pete Rose will probably make it in eventually. I think it's not going to be until he's dead. And I think eventually some veterans committee might consider putting Bonds and Clemens and Sosa. Well, Joe, I love Slam and Sammy. I think they're going to say Sammy's too much of a one-trick pony.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think he really deserved it, to be honest with you. I mean, and that's coming from a Cub fan. I just didn't think he really deserved it anyway. The rest of these guys, it's kind of, you have to decide what you're going to do about it. If you're going to put an exhibit into the Hall of Fame, or if you're going to let these guys get in.
And the thing for me here is did Barry Bonds ever have a positive test? Because I don't think so. So if he never had a positive test, and things like that, how can you just say he tests? I mean, you have to look at like the bulk up and everything like that. I get that. But if the argument for Ortiz is he has the numbers and he never tested positive, neither did Barry Bonds. And while we have that debate of who's the true home run king, stats, fact of the matter is Barry Bonds is your home run king. And I don't see why he should not be in. And Clemens has insane numbers. Clemens was easily one of the best pitchers of his day. And I mean, even Curt Schilling, personal matters and politics aside, that should not matter. It's baseball. It's not personal human decency. So I don't know. It just sits with me wrong that they're the way that they're going about it. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't feel right to me.
Yeah, I have a bigger problem with Schilling and Clemens not being in than I do with Bonds, but I think, I mean, those two were easily the best pitchers of their day. The sock game, I mean, that's going to be a Red Sox lore for 500 years.
So I'm going to agree with you partially. Schilling was one of the better postseason pitchers. He wasn't a phenomenal regular season pitcher, and his numbers show that out. He was good. Was he one of the greatest regular season pitchers? I don't think so. He was still pitching in the era where you had guys that were able to get to that 300 win plateau, and he fell woefully short. And I know a lot of people are going to say, well, so did John Smoltz. But let's keep in mind, John Smoltz was a full-time closer for a couple of years as well. And he is one of two pitchers to go, 200 wins, 150 saves? That's a unique number that's not likely to be matched anytime soon. First of all, to be a good enough starter for long enough to get to that 200 win mark and then pitch long enough as a closer to pick up, that many saves. So, and here's the thing with the postseason stuff. Schilling's sock is already in the Hall of Fame. The bloody sock was taken from that game and delivered immediately to Cooperstown. So the sock is already there. His postseason accomplishments are already there. I believe they have a whole wing now devoted to the World Series champion teams. So it's not like Schilling has been scrubbed out of the Hall of Fame altogether. Are his regular season numbers good enough that he should have been elected, ignoring the fact that he shoots off of his mouth like an idiot and basically told the writers, I don't care what you do. So they said, all right, fine, we'll use your vote for someone else. What do you think, Jason?
I think his numbers are there. I think he was a dominant pitcher, and while he didn't have the 300 wins, and yes, there were some pitchers that were reaching that plateau. It's not just about who gets to 300 wins. It's an all-around performance thing. And Schilling had a tremendous career with 3 different teams. He pitched great for the Phillies. He was kind of almost the only pitcher on that team that was solid. I mean, there were a couple like Green and whatnot. But then he goes and he does what he does with Arizona and helps bring a world championship to that team with Randy Johnson. And then he goes to the Red Sox and he performed well with the Red Sox. It's hard for me to not have Curt Schilling higher than 58.6%.
Go.
Yeah, that's kind of, you can't argue with some of those results. I don't dive into the regular season numbers as much, but I mean, we judge a lot of athletes by the number of rings that they have. We do that across a lot of sports, and the guy had played for 3 different teams, led 2 of them to rings.
Something else I read. Do you think Schilling playing for more teams, do you think that hurt him? And do you think that because Poppy was pretty much just with one team, do you think that gave him a boost?
I don't think so, because I don't know how important the teams are. I do think it's more of the stats and things like that. So, um, I mean, I'm pulling up Schilling stats, and he had a few like potential Cy Young caliber seasons. Um, I mean, in '99 with the Phillies, and figure 1999, the Phillies are not good here. 15 wins, 6 losses. Um, Go to 2001 with Arizona, 22-6. 2004 with Boston, which would be the year that they won the World Series, 21-6. Um, he had multiple Cy Young caliber seasons. His overall ERA looks like was a 3.46, which is really solid, especially considering having some time in the American League. Um, Career wins, he has 216, which, yes, that's shorter than the 300. But I just kind of look at the way he pitched in those different seasons, and I think he should have had more votes, if not be right at that 75 threshold.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough. All right, so the guys who didn't make it that are still alive and fighting for next year. So interestingly, we only had 2 guys from the current class of players that were added to the ballot this year that made it past the 5% threshold to remain on the ballot. Alex Rodriguez had 34.3%, and Jimmy Rollins 9.4%. Jason, I'm really hopeful that over the years, Rollins' candidacy will pick up some steam because he was phenomenal.
Yeah, and I think I think you're going to see something similar to Scott Rowland here, where he's going to bide his time. He's going to climb steadily each year as people drop off. Because, I mean, think about, next year, you're going to lose Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, Sosa from this ballot. And in the next couple of years, you're going to have players that will probably be in there a little bit. Like you're going to see next year, Carlos Beltran and John Lackey. John Lackey's not going to get the 5% needed. Beltran is probably iffy. I think he'll sneak in. And then after a couple of years, you have like Beltre, Utley, Maurer, David Wright, Colon, and Holiday. A couple of those guys won't make it. So I think you're going to see Rollins steadily climb, because I think fact of the matter is he is absolutely a Hall of Fame shortstop. His defensive numbers were there. His offensive numbers were there. World Series champion, National League MVP. Yeah, I don't. If Rollins does not make it into a Hall of Fame, I will be really disappointed.
Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'd expect him to get there. I think he certainly deserves it. Everything he did in Philly on the field and off the field, I think. I'm kind of surprised that A-Rod got as high as he did on the first round. I don't know if that's because of his his television gigs, and maybe he's built up some goodwill that way. I don't know that he necessarily deserves it, but we'll see what happens there.
And that's what drives me nuts with the Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, and Curt Schilling stuff, because A-Rod was suspended for a season due to positive tests, and he still got 34% of the vote. To me, it's if you're going to vote for A-Rod, how do you not vote for Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling? Because he tested positive. He was actually suspended for a full season. So I think if you're going to give A-Rod votes here, it's it's completely hypocritical to not give the same votes to Bonds, Clemens, and Schilling.
Right, and I think that's probably something. I think we're hitting the nail on the head here. I mean, if you're going to give a guy like that votes, it's probably because, again, he's in baseball media now. The other three basically have said, "F it, I don't care." At this point, they've kind of ignored it or tried to ignore it. And A-Rod has built up some goodwill. I don't think he should be there. I don't think he should get there, but I don't know that any of us thought that Poppy should get there right away, at least.
Yeah, I was shocked a little bit that A-Rod got a third of the ballot. But at the same time, I'm not completely shocked. Jason, I completely agree with you. I don't even think A-Rod should be eligible on this ballot, period, because he was busted and suspended. But, that's not my call. And I'm wondering if a lot of those people that did vote for A-Rod did vote for the other three as well. I know Sammy has lost a lot of support. And again, I think a lot of that could be because all he did was hit home runs. He didn't really do anything else spectacularly. So I was happy to see Wagner still getting some positive movement upwards. He went up to 51%. Andrew Jones is getting some traction at 41.4%. Sheffield still gaining a little bit at 40.6%, but he is on his 8th ballot. So as much as I'd like to see the chef of Atlanta sneak in, I think it's going to be the same kind of idea. One trick pony, hit a lot of home runs, hit for a lot of power, didn't really do a ton else. Looking on here as well, Jeff Kent, 32.7 on his 9th ballot. I don't think he's going to get enough push next year to get in. Manny Ramirez, I don't know what the hell Manny's doing on the ballot. Please see previous rant about A-Rod being suspended after being caught. Also, again, I can't stand Manny. I hated Manny being Manny. That's just me personally, though. Andy Pettit's support has been dropping. He's down to about 10.7. That was after his 4th ballot. I don't see Pettit gaining enough support. He didn't really have great numbers in the regular season. He had a lot of postseason numbers. He has some rings with New York, but again, he was also directly indicted with the Balco. And I don't think his numbers are enough to wow people like Clemens' numbers were, that he's going to be able to sneak through from that. All right. So, I also found it interesting, guys. We had 2 of the newcomers, Carl Crawford and Jake Peavy. They didn't even collect any votes. We had talked about guys with really short peaks, and while they were good, they just not good enough. Those 2 guys right there. All right. So some other guys coming up in the future years, and this is why I see that there may be potentially a problem for Roland in the next couple of years. I think he really needs to get in next year, because if he's held on to 2024, he's going to get pushed back under a little bit, because you've got Adrian Beltre coming in, who's one of the best third basemen the 3 of us have been able to see play in our lifetimes. If you compare Beltre to Roland straight up, there is nobody in the world who would give a vote to Scott Rowland and not give a vote to Adrian Beltre. And the 2024 class has a lot of good talent coming in. You've got Chase Utley coming in, who I don't think he's going to be first ballot, but I think he is going to make it eventually, kind of like a la Rollins. Joe Mauer is going to be an interesting case. David Wright, although I think David Wright's injury bug is going to knock him off like Ryan Howard. Although he played long enough, he might stay on for a couple years. I don't see him making it. Big Sexy Bartolo Colon will be on. The guy pitched for what feels like basically from the time we were all born until now. And also Matt Holliday comes on in 2024. And then you've got a lot of star power coming in 2025 too. You've got CeCe coming on. You've got Ichiro. And I swear, if Ichiro's not a first ballot Hall of Fame, I don't know who is. Ian Kindler will be coming on. Dustin Pedroia is coming on. And Felix Hernandez will be coming on. I do think Roland's going to make it, but I really think if Roland doesn't get in next year, I think it's going to be difficult for him to get in after that. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tougher for him. I still think he gets in. With him being at the percentage that he is now, I'm scrolling up here just to double check where he was, 63.2%. and the two people above him that had higher percentages were Bonds and Clemens, who are dropping off. So I think based off of who's going to stay on this ballot and who's coming in next year, Rolen has to make it next year. I don't see, unless people are turning in empty ballots and blank ballots, I don't see how Rolen doesn't make it next year.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the space above him is getting cleared off. I do think that 2024 class and 2025 class is going to be full of some guys who would steal some of that. So I do think he still gets in. I think Sheffield is going to be a little more tricky. I think Billy Wagner could be a little tricky for him. He's only got 3 more years yet there, I think. But yeah, I don't know. I do think he should get in. I think this year or next year is the year to do it.
Yeah, it makes me worried about Andrew Jones, because he is defensively, he is the greatest center fielder to ever play the game. The advanced metrics favor him over almost anybody other than maybe Willie Mays. And he had a great bat. I mean, I know his peak wasn't great, but he put up tremendous numbers before he fell off. We'll see. I really hope he does make it in by the end, but by the end, he might be around some crowded classes. So, same issue there. The other big guy I'm pulling for, like I said a couple weeks ago, Billy Wagner. The dude was a tremendous closer, but I was reading a story about him. Did you know when he was growing up, he was actually a right hand. He's normally a righty for everything. He was pitching right-handed, got hurt, so he switched and used his left arm so he didn't have to stop, and found that he could actually throw the ball harder with his left arm. That's freaking incredible. All right, guys. Anything else Hall of Fame wise for you guys? All right. I have a quick little story I wanted to slip in there. There was a plaque for Jackie Robinson that was placed outside of his birthplace in 2001, outside of Cairo, Georgia, to commemorate him. It was discovered last year. Someone had shot it multiple times because, racial tolerance in the South. It's such a thing. The vandalized plaque is going to be given to the Kansas City's Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, and they're going to put it on display. It's going to be the display will open in mid-April. It's going to coincide with their 75th anniversary celebration of Jackie breaking the color barrier. Museum Community Engagement Manager Kiona Sink said in a tweet that the vandalized marker will, quote, serve as a reminder that the ugliness of America's past persists to this day. I think that's a great use for the plaque, and hopefully we can maybe knock some tolerance into some thick-headed individuals. I'm just going to leave it at that. All right, next up, guys, we have one of our collective favorite video games to play, MLB The Show. We've announced the cover athlete for the show 22, and it's going to be none other than Shohei Ohtani. He becomes the first Asian athlete to be featured on the cover of a video game that's centered in the U.S. around the 4 major sports. So congratulations to Shohei. And he's also, and this surprised me, he's also the first member of the Angels to be featured on the cover of a video game. I'm shocked he beat Mike Trout to the punch on that one. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, aside from Mike Trout, I'm also surprised that Ichiro was never featured on a cover there, or even going back even further. Now, this is probably early video game, more like PC video game, but Hideo Nomo. I think it's really surprising that he's even the first Asian athlete to be featured as the cover athlete for a game surrounding the 4 major sports. But great for him.
Anything from you, Joe?
No, I'm looking forward to it when it comes out. I'm certainly going to get that and check that out. And I mean, he's earned it. That's.
I will
I'm
be
not
very
shocked by it.
Yeah, and I will be very disappointed if they don't have some kind of version that instead of like the show with SHOW 22, they need to drop the W. Make it the show without that W 22. They have to.
It would be too easy not to. you know, if you're going to tee the ball up that high, you got to swing at it. Or at the very least, if they don't play with it somewhere, I'm going to be very disappointed in the publishers. All right, guys, that's enough general news around baseball. And nothing really new about the CBA. They did meet again Tuesday. Nothing major came out of it. They're still talking. Spring training was originally scheduled to start on April 14th for pitchers and catchers to report. So,
February 14th.
Yeah. So,
not April.
Oh, did I say April? My bad. Yeah, February. Yeah. Well, I know the way things are going right now. Maybe it will be April. God, I hope not. But yeah. So, as Joe famously said several times now, lock them all together in a room and tell them they're not allowed to come out or use the bathroom until they hammer out a deal. And also, I say pump in plenty of water and whatever else is needed to speed up the urgency thereof. All right. Looks like Joe temporarily disappeared. We'll see him when he comes back. All right, Jason, let's get started with the Diamondbacks. So the Diamondbacks had an absolutely terrible year last year unless they were playing the Phillies. The Diamondbacks went 52 and 110. They finished fifth in the West. A depth chart with nothing that's really crazy scary. You've got Carson Kelly, Christian Walker, Ketel Marte, Josh Rojas, Nick Ahmed, David Peralta, Dalton Varsho, Pavin Smith, Zach Gallen, Madison Bumgarner, Merrill Kelly, Luke Weaver, Humberto Castellanos. Now, they did pick up Mark Melancon as a new closer. So, for the 15, 20, 25 games that there will be an opportunity to save, at least they've got a guy you can trust to save, as he was the major league save leader last year, if I remember correctly. The Diamondbacks, they picked up Melancon 2 years, $12 million with a $5 million mutual option for 24. They picked up Kyle Nelson. He was a waiver claim, and they got Jordan Luplow in a trade with Tampa Bay. They sent over Ronnie Simon. And let's face it, if Tampa Bay is willing to trade prospects, you're better off not trading because usually Tampa Bay knows better than everybody else. That's just my personal thought on that. So, Joe, I'll let you start off on this one. What do you think of the Diamondbacks?
Well, I mean, so far they haven't done anything to improve on where they were at, so I don't see anything really changing for them. I mean, Melancon's worth a few games, but they could potentially, I guess, win 5 or 10 more, but I don't really see them making any kind of push here.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, well, Joe, I'm glad to see that you came back. You disappeared there like the Cubs in June. But no, the Diamondbacks. I looked at this, and we were coming at this from a where do they need talent, where do they need to improve, and I'm looking at this, and my initial thought goes everywhere. Like they have a couple okay bats. They have a couple okay pitchers. I am high on Dalton Varsho. I think Varsho is going to be good, and then they'll trade him away. And they have some good prospects in the minors. Their draft pick from this past season, of course it's going to take a couple seasons for him to be ready. But Jordan Lawler, people are high on him. I think Zach Gallen is a decent starting pitcher. Madison Bumgarner is still plugging along. He does decent. I'm waiting for him to drop off, though. There's just too much that they need. They're going to have another 100-loss season, I think, since they don't get to play the Phillies all day, every day. So I think you're going to see them maybe at 55 wins.
What do you think for wins, Joe?
Yeah, I'm with Jason, somewhere around 55, 57 tops. There's, when we watch like the NFL draft and you said the Cowboys, oh, they need this, oh, they need that, or the Vikings need this or they need that. The list is way too long when you list the needs for the Diamondbacks. And Melancon may plug a hole, but that's about all. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And by the way, in the shopping list for the Vikings, Joe, it's pretty damn long, including salary cap space. Yeah. anyway, Jason, you hit it on the head. You look at this lineup and what can be improved. Pretty much every position, other than maybe second base with Kettle Marte. That might be the only position they don't need to immediately improve. This is a team filled with holes that is not likely to be tremendously better next year. When the craziness of free agency reopens, I'm sure they'll be able to snag a couple decent pieces that they'll then be able to trade at the trading deadline to, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Yankees, whoever the heck else is going to be pushing for playoff spots because, that's what the Diamondbacks do. I think I'm going to put them right. I think I'm only going to like 53, 54. I think even saying 55 wins is a stretch. The Giants, I don't think are going to be as good next year as they were this year. I don't think the Dodgers are going to be quite as good next year, but I think the Rockies will be a little bit more improved. The Padres should be improved. So I don't think the Diamondbacks are going to be able to really gain very much from where they were. So I have to ask this. I wish Jim was here to ask this. Who's going to have more losses next year, the Orioles or the Diamondbacks? What do you think, Joe?
Diamondbacks.
Diamondbacks, Jason?
Absolutely, the Diamondbacks. The Orioles have too many good prospects coming up at some point that will just get them some extra wins on their own. Thinking Grayson Rodriguez, thinking Adley Rutschman, plus the players that they have coming back already. Diamondbacks absolutely will be worse out of the two.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. All right, guys, let's move on to the Rocky Mountain High, the Colorado Rockies. The Colorado Rockies last year, they were 74-87. They were fourth in the NL West. And of note, they did very well against both the Braves and the Phillies. Freaking Rockies. Looking at the depth chart, they've got Elias Diaz catching, CJ Cron at first, Garrett Hampson at second, Ryan McMahon at third, Brendan Rodgers at short. It is, I know we were expecting this. It's so weird to not say Trevor Story there because he was there for so long. In the outfield, you got Ramiel Tapia, Sam Hilliard, Charlie Blackmon is still there. Not a terrible starting rotation, not a great one. German Marquez, Kyle Freeland, Austin Gomber, Antonio Senzatella. They've got Carlos Estevez closing. They still have Daniel Bard, Lucas Gilbreth, Robert Stevenson. So Antonio Senzatella got the big deal from the Rockies so far, a 5-year, $50.5 million deal to avoid arbitration, along with a team option for 2027 at $14 million. Watching him pitch last year, guys, despite playing in the thin air of the Rockies, he pitched better than I expected. And I actually like that deal. I don't think that's an extreme deal one way or the other. So hopefully that works out well for both player and team. I like the deal for CJ Cron, 2 years, $14.5 million. And they brought back Julius Chastain for 1 year, 1.25. Hey, why not? It's let's see what you got kind of deal with a bunch of incentives as well. So I think they'll be improved a little bit. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, they should be improved a little bit. I think it's still hard to see kind of what happens at short. Do they decide to spend money after the deal's done and bring back Story, or do they do something crazy, or do they go after somebody else in free agency? I think losing John Gray is going to hurt them quite a bit. That's kind of a big letdown for them. I think Marquez is excellent, easily the ace of that staff. So they've got some pieces. CJ Cron's pretty good. I'm really interested to see what they do again once. I say this, I think, with every team, but once things open back up, we'll see what these teams decide to do and what they decide to spend money on.
What do you think, Jason?
I actually think they're going to be worse, especially if they don't make a starting pitcher adjustment, and if they don't, especially if Trevor Story is gone, which I think he will because he is just going to get paid. You're losing two really big pieces of that team. So I think Their infield is not nearly as good. Their outfield is okay. Starting pitching, aside from Marquez, it's iffy. So I think you're looking at them dropping a little bit. I'm going to say like 68 wins.
Ooh, that's a significant drop, a 6-win drop.
Yeah, and the main reason for that is you're losing Trevor Story's bat and glove, and you're losing a solid number 2 to number 3 in John Gray. You only get to throw Marquez out there once every 5 days. So if you don't make an adjustment there, you're going to be losing John Gray's wins.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, win total wise, I agree with Jason. I think somewhere around there, 68, 66, somewhere in there. They didn't add enough so far to really impress me as far as being able to maintain that. I mean, can we also look at the fact that they had 74 wins and what the Rockies have, or the Diamondbacks have 52? That's quite a significant difference between last and fourth in that division. Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
And I think a big part of that is the top 3 teams in that division just are going to beat up on those two.
Well, you definitely saw it with the top 2 teams this year before the wheels completely fell off the San Diego wagon. There's a couple things I'm thinking that might help the Rockies, though. Ryan Rollison, one of their lefties in the minors, he should be getting pretty close to coming up. Eleuterius Montero should be getting pretty close. Ryan Velade should be getting pretty close. The Rockies don't have a bad farm system. So, if some of these guys come up and get hot right away, especially the hitters, because as we know, in Coors Field, anything can and does happen at any time. That could be all they need to get back to close to where they were. Yes, the loss of Story is big. I'm also not going to rule out, though, that the Rockies won't just throw 16 or 17 Binks armored trucks full of cash at him and get him to come back. I know they're a small market team. They're not really known for huge deals, but they've wanted Story to be re-signed for years and years and years. And I have a feeling, he'll let them know what the offers are on the table. And if they can throw enough cash his way, he will come back, I think.
Another prospect to keep an eye on is Zach Veen in the Rockies farm system. He might be a year or 2 away, but I think he's going to be pretty solid. And I think that the thing with the Rockies trying to re-sign Story, I think Story's at the point in his career where he's not focusing on the money. He wants to go somewhere that he's going to have a good chance at winning a title. And he's not going to get that with the Rockies right now. They need too much. And I think it's not so much the money aspect. He's going to try and find a good contender.
That's a fair point. So I think I'm going to put them right around where they were. I'm going to say anywhere from like 72 to 75 wins. I don't think it'll be a significant gain or loss either way. I think they'll be able to find enough wins to replace Story. All right. Anything else in the Rockies, guys?
I mean, you said they've been wanting to re-sign him for a long time. I think if you really wanted to re-sign him, you would have done it by now.
I mean, and that's going to get back into the whole why the hell didn't Atlanta re-sign Freddie Freeman 2 hours after the World Series? I don't have an answer for that, and I wish I did.
And I also think if the Rockies have been wanting to re-sign him and they haven't, it might be from Trevor Story's side of things, or maybe he doesn't want to re-sign.
I don't know necessarily that he doesn't want to re-sign, more so that he wants to test the market and see what he's worth. Because I don't remember the numbers, but I was reading last year the Rockies have thrown some pretty big contracts at him. So I think they would be willing. He's a franchise guy. You don't just let a franchise guy go for nothing. So I know it's hard to say, and especially because we don't know what, if any, rules are going to change with free agency with the CBA. But I could see it happening. I don't think we should completely shut the door.
I think if they had made any substantial offer and he wanted to take it, he would have taken it by now. But I also think that if they've made offers and Story said no thanks, then they did a disservice to themselves by not trading him last year.
Well, there is that. I said it. I said when we did our trade deadline episode last year, I think my exact words were, "What in the hell were the Rockies thinking not trading him at the deadline?" I think those were my exact words, actually, because to this day that makes no sense to me. When a guy that big is leaving as a free agency and you don't have guaranteed in writing that he is coming back, why don't you trade him to get something before he walks away and you get nothing? It makes no sense. All right, guys. Anything else on the Rockies? You good? You good? All right. Let's move on to the San Diego Padres, one of the arguably most underwhelming teams from last year from what we all expected them to be. So unlike the White Sox, who underwhelmed in the postseason, the Padres decided to underwhelm in the regular season and just fall completely apart. So the Padres, who came out of the gate hot, ended up under 500 at 79 and 83. They were third in the NL West. I mean, we were talking for the longest time that they were going to be one of the wild card teams with whoever didn't win the NL West. So, all right, looking at the depth chart, you've got Austin Nola. They also acquired Jorge Alfaros. They've got Eric Hosmer at first, Jake Cronenworth at second, Manny Machado at third, Fernando Tatis at shortstop. And as we learned last year, Fernando can also play anywhere in the outfield if they want to save some wear and tear on him. Plus, if the DH does come to the NL, I'm sure Tatis is going to get at least one day a week where he gets to just DH and not have to worry about getting beaten up on the field. And they'd be dumb not to. In the outfield, they have Jurickson Profar. They've got Trent Grisham, Will Myers. Their pitching rotation, not bad. Joe Musgrove, Yu Darvish, Blake Snell, Mike Clevenger, Chris Paddock. They've got Emilio Pagan closing. They also picked up Luis Garcia. They still have Drew Pomeranz, Austin Adams, Craig Stammen, Pierce Johnson. Pierce Johnson was an option that was exercised. Same with Stammen and same with Profar. Jorge Alfaro, that was a trade with Miami for either a player to be named later or cash. So we don't know what's going to go there. Luis Garcia was a new signing. Corey Rozier, they picked up from these in the Seattle trade, along with Ray Kerr. So they did lose a whole lot of players. Like we mentioned already, they lost Melanson, who's with the Diamondbacks. Daniel Hudson's gone. Tommy Pham's gone. Jason's favorite former Philly, Vinny Velo's gone. Ross Detweiler's gone. Marisnik's gone. They traded Adam Frazier to the Mariners. So a lot of upheaval with the Padres this offseason. And it also shows with you had a change at manager, and I think a lot of the coaching staff got sacked as well. So this is a hard team to put the finger on how they're going to be. On paper, they look like a team that should be at least capable of 500 ball and better than 500 ball with some of those bats. And their pitching, I mean, it fell apart last year because the offense died out. Guys, I think for me, this is one of the hardest ones to figure out and predict what the hell's going to happen. Jason, why don't you go first on this one? Jason, unmute, buddy.
Thought I had already been unmuted. Anyway, we talked about how they were underwhelming, but we need to remember they weren't underwhelming the entire season. They were underwhelming the last month to month and a half. They just completely fell apart after the All-Star break. And I think a lot of this has to go back to the culture of the clubhouse. I think, manager lost the team, didn't make the right decisions. But they're going to, they have that new manager now. They made that change that they needed. And I mean, keeping Austin Nola, trading for Jorge Alfaro, I thought was really good. That's an upgrade for them. Eric Hosmer should be solid. Cronenworth is a young stud. Manny had a great year. Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to be an MVP candidate for a while. Their outfield is solid. Starting pitching is fairly decent, 1 through 5. Relief pitchers, if there was a spot that they would potentially struggle, I think it would be with the bullpen. I think re-signing Profar was solid. So I think they're going to get second in the division this year. I think having that change in leadership, because they also let go of their general manager, if I remember. I don't remember that exactly, but they have a change in leadership, and I think it's going to be for the best. And I think you'll see them get second. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm going to say they're going to win about 10 more games. They're going to go 89 wins.
Big jump from Jason. All right, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot to like about this lineup. There's a lot to like about this team. I think, there was a lot to like before they fell apart. They mismanaged Fernando's injury clearly last year. You nip that in the bud in May, it doesn't become an issue in August and September. So clearly there's mismanagement from top to bottom, at least from the management side of things. I think player-wise, there's a lot to like here.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about the Padres too, they were still plus 21 on the run differential despite ending the season on a 2-8 skid. So it's not like the team can hit. Hitting is not the problem, but timely hitting was the problem. They had a lot of Jason. They reminded me in some ways of the Phillies, where they had games where they would just mash the ever-loving crap out of the ball, and then they had games where their bats would completely go silent and they'd hang their pitchers out to dry, which we'll be talking about a lot in 2 weeks when we talk about the NL East, because it happened to both of us for a good portion of last season. I don't know if I'm ready to jump 10 wins, but they should be. I think they should be quite a bit better than they were last year. I think they're going to be at least 500. I think I'm going to go about 85, 84, 85 wins for the Padres. That's my prediction. Joe, did you give me a win total?
No, I'd say somewhere around 83, 84.
Okay.
Right around there. Yeah.
All right, guys. Anything else on the Padres? They should be an exciting club. I mean, there's a ton of young talent in the National League right now, between guys like Fernando Tatis Jr., Ronald Acuna, Bryce Harper. I know he's getting a little older, but still, Juan Soto, like guys that should be competing for that MVP award every single year. And they're all locked in on these long deals. So they're not going anywhere. And it's going to be really exciting, I think, over the next 5 years to watch these young guys duke it out for that MVP award every year. I mean, it's also another reason why the NL is better than the AL, but might be a little bias showing on my part there.
You said that Bryce Harper's getting old. He's not even
really?
30 yet.
Okay, and how old is Acuna?
I don't know.
Like 22, 23. I know I should. Before I say, as I'm saying that like crap, I actually don't know the answer offhand.
Made it sound like Harper's like gonna need a walker soon.
No.
Like,
that's why I
hey
tried
Bryce,
to walk
you prefer skis or tennis balls? Like,
dude, Acuna's only 20 though. He's got a decade behind him. Juan Soto is right around. Juan Soto is only 19. And Fernando, I believe, is right around there as well. He's 20. So I'm sorry. No, he's 23. I'm sorry. I can't read.
I'll say you just said Juan Soto's 19.
No, I looked.
Has he been in the league since he was 12?
No, like an idiot. I looked at the debut date. I didn't look at the birth date. Soto's 23. Yeah, I'm an idiot. You can call that one. Yeah.
We need that picture from the bench warmers of the guy who's got the grown like 40-year-old who's got the paper that's like, I am 12.
Yeah.
But Bryce Harper is only entering the middle of his prime.
Where's Danny Almonte at?
Oh, there's a name you haven't heard in a long time. man, every time somebody in the Little League World Series comes close to the perfect game, they're like, grab the birth certificate, go find it. Do not let him Almonte another perfect game. Oh man. All right, let's move on to the Dodgers. In honor of the Dodgers, I am wearing for Bill Plaske the sterile shopping mall that was the battery that turned into a bunch of raving, crazy Georgians filling that park and making it incredibly loud on the Dodgers last year in the NLCS. So the Dodgers last year, incredible season for both the Dodgers and the Giants. The Dodgers went 106 and 56, and it's just insane that was second place. I think we can all agree on that. That was absolutely ridiculous. And not only was that second place, they also had a positive 269 run differential, which was first in the majors by a very, very, very large margin. So the Dodgers, they were the first NL wild card, and they were eliminated by the Braves in the NLCS. Looking at the depth chart, not a ton of turnover here. Will Smith is still catching along with Austin Barnes. They've got Max Muncy at first, Chris Taylor at second, coming on a new deal for 4 years, $56 million, with the team option for 2026 for $12 million. Justin Turner at third. From everything I've heard from his injury, he should be good to go on opening day. Trey Turner at short. Outfield is still looking really good. A.J. Pollock, Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts. And, of course, that's starting pitching. I mean, freaking awesome, man. Walker Buehler, Julio Urias, Tony Gonsolin, new acquisition Andrew Heaney on a 1 year, $8.5 million deal. Trevor Bauer, I don't even know if I can't stand the guy. I really hope they cut him after everything from last year, but, we'll see. And for the record, Ozuna should be cut too. Their bullpen still looks fantastic. They've got Blake Treinen as the current closer as of now. Now that Jansen is a free agent, they still have Daniel Hudson, Alex Vesia, Phil Bickford, Brusdar Graterol. Guys, this team is still stacked. Even without Clayton Kershaw, that's still an incredible rotation to have. Granted, not quite as good as it would be with Kershaw, but then again, Kershaw doesn't pitch more than about a third of the year, maybe half the year if he's lucky anymore. So, and he, let's face it, Kershaw's not the guy you want to have in the postseason because he did get his one ring finally, but let's face it, Kershaw is not known to be a postseason killer. This is still going to be an incredible team, probably still close to 100 wins, I would think. Jason, what do you think?
Yeah, I really like this Dodgers team. They're losing a few players like Kershaw, which Kershaw has been injured frequently. Joe Kelly, Max Scherzer, I think, is going to be the biggest loss for them with that rotation, especially if Trevor Bauer isn't back. I think losing Nebel and Jansen can hurt the bullpen a little bit, but they have the gaps filled. It's a matter of staying healthy, I think. They have some really good studs in their system. Like I believe they have Luis Angel, Acuna, and unless he may be with the Rangers. I'm trying to think back here. But they also have a player, Miguel Vargas, who's going to be a stud, I think, at some point. I'm high on Brusdar Graterol. I think he's going to have a breakthrough year in the pen. Gavin Lux, I think, it is going to get better. Will Smith. I like this Dodgers team. I don't think that they're going to get to the 106 wins that they did last year. I am going out on a limb and say I think they're going to get back to the top of the division. I think they're going to win it this next year, and I'm going to go with about 102 wins.
What do you think, Joe? There is a ton to like about this team, the outfield in particular. Outfield, infield is phenomenal. Trey Turner and Justin Turner, Muncy and Taylor. That's a solid infield. I'd love to have that one in Chicago if I didn't have some of the guys that I have. But I think I'm not disappointed too much with the Kershaw loss is not going to hurt them as much as I think Jansen and Joe Kelly will. So I think they're going to lose a few games here on this. They're not. I don't think you're going to. I think they might be an even 100. I don't know that they're going to. They're definitely not staying at 106. I don't know if they'll retake the division or not. I think we can kind of. There's too many what ifs at this point, but as far as free agency, if they go after anybody with all this money that they're not going to have to spend on some of these guys, so I'd say right around 100 wins.
Brian Acuna was signed by the Twins, so
I was talking Louis Angel, not that one.
No, isn't that the third Acuna brother? I thought Brian was the middle one. Or is Brian the cousin?
It looks like Louis Angel is actually with the Rangers. So
okay, I'm going to be honest. Acuna's got a ton of baseball playing relatives, and it's very hard to keep track of all of them since most of them are younger guys. They're just now being picked out of the international draft. So, yeah, I'll try and keep better track of those guys as they get closer to the show. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick around my prediction. I think I'm going to stick right around 100 wins. Are they going to catch the Giants? That's going to be – I don't know if they are. I think the Giants – I don't think the Giants are going to win 107 next year. I think they're going to regress a little bit too. But I think the Giants are going to stay a game or two ahead. I think – and I might very well be wrong. Jason's bias against Gabe Kapler is well known. But I do think the Dodgers are going to be right behind the Giants next year. Regardless, the Dodgers are going to be back in the playoffs, whether they're in as the division winner or as a wild card team. They will be back in the playoffs, no doubt about
that. I mean, you could call it a bias against Kapler, but I mean, Kapler got Kapler. He did exactly what we thought he would do. It just took till the postseason to get there. It's just.
I still can't believe he walked into the most obvious trap that has ever been set up by an opposing manager that literally every other manager in baseball could see through.
I can believe it. You know why?
Because he's Gabe Kapler.
Because it's Gabe Kapler. Looking back also at some Dodgers prospects, a couple ones to keep an eye out for. Michael Busch, second baseman. He may be up this year, and I know that the team is high on him. Bobby Miller, right-hand pitcher, and potentially this year, maybe 2023, Andy Page is in the outfield. If anything happens as far as their top players go, they do have some depth there. But yeah, I'm going to take the Dodgers as the division champs this year. My dad's a big Dodgers fan. I was talking to him a little bit about them, and I think the Dodgers will do what they need to.
All right. Anything else from you, Joe? All right. Let's move on to our last team in the NL West, the champions of the division last year and the owners of the best record in baseball. Not that it helped them in the postseason. You have the San Francisco Giants. They went 107-51, which is absolutely freaking incredible. They were eliminated by said Dodgers in the NLDS in Game 5, although the Dodgers still made the questionable decision of using Max Scherzer as a closer and effectively blew his arm out for the NLCS. Still don't understand why you pay Kenley Jansen all that money and don't use him in the ninth inning. I digress. Looking at the Giants' depth chart, you've got Kirk Casale at catcher, Brandon Belt at first, who became only like the 14th player to ever accept a qualifying offer. Tommy LaStella at second, Evan Longoria at third, Brandon Crawford at short, Darren Ruff in the outfield along with Mike Yastrzemski, Lamont Wade Jr. Still a very solid pitching staff, Logan Webb, Anthony DeSclafani, Alex Wood, Alex Cobb, Tyler Beede. Closing Jake McGee and also Camilo Duvall, Tyler Rogers, Jarlin Garcia, Jose Alvarez. So Alex Wood they brought back for 2 years, $25 million. I think that's about right for the value at this point in his career. I like the deal for Sclafani, 3 years, $36 million. I'm actually surprised Sclafani didn't hold out for a little more money than that. Alvarez was a club option. They brought back Wilmer Flores in a club option. And Brandon Belt, like I said, only the, I think, 14th player to sign a qualifying offer. The new acquisitions, they picked up Alex Cobb, 2 years, $18 million, plus a $10 million team option for 2024. They picked up Austin Dean as a waiver claim, Hunter Harvey's waiver claim, and Joe Palumbo as a waiver claim. The only couple losses, Jay Jackson, they sent to Atlanta for a player to be named later, cash. Johnny Cueto declined. They declined his option. Buster Posey retired. So this is a whole new world, seeing a catcher not named Buster Posey behind home plate for the Giants. That's going to be weird to say for a while, I think. Kazmir's gone. Kevin Gossman, he went to Toronto. KB is gone, although he's still out there as a free agent. Tony Watson's gone. Tyler Chatwood, Donovan Solano. I would say an expected amount of turnover, coming off a whole bunch of guys that were on short, make it or break it, prove it deals. Plus, we knew KB wasn't going to be staying. He's a Scott Boras client. There was no way in hell he was going to sign a long-term deal after being traded. That's just not how Scott Boras will ever operate. Joe, what do you think about the Giants?
I really, really love this pitching staff. Watching them a little closer in the playoffs last year, I was super impressed with them. From a pitching standpoint, I think they have a lot of core Giant guys. You come across and you watch some of these teams, and you just know, like, Kershaw will always be remembered as a Dodger regardless of where he goes. These guys are believing where they're at. These Giants players, I think, Belt is a huge piece for them. Brandon Crawford's huge for them. Having Longoria, who, some of these guys had a fantastic year last year. Now, is that just catching lightning in the bottle? I don't know. Will some of these guys who had career years after a little bit of a drop off again? It's possible. I don't know that I think they still win the division. I think, I'd say right around 102, 103.
Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, so I believe Brandon Belt was my pick last year for most underrated player at the beginning of the year, and he really had a good season. So I was really pleased with that, and I think he is good for that team. I think that what's going to be their trouble here. They also losing Scott Kazmir, Kevin Gossman, Buster Posey. He had kind of a resurgent year. I believe he was comeback player of the year. And they lost future Philadelphia Philly Chris Bryant. One thing that I find interesting is seeing outfield and Darren Ruff. He was a Phillies prospect, set AA records and home runs while he was in Reading. Never just did well in Philly. Struggled at the plate, struggled with the defense. So I'll be interested to see how he does. I think the Giants lost a bit. I think last year they overachieved. They had a great season, but I think we saw their lack of experience and how they overachieved just by the way that they lost in the NLDS, losing to the Dodgers, who were definitely a better team. I think I said earlier that I saw the Padres as second in the division. I'm gonna actually have them stay in third, because with 89 wins, they're gonna stay in third. I'm going to take the Giants as the second place team in this division, and I think we're going to see a drop off down to about 98 wins.
Okay, so bigger drop off. One thing I mentioned last year, I don't know if it was with you guys or if it was in one of the solo podcasts I did after games were done in the playoffs. I think if Brandon Belt hadn't gotten hurt, I think that Giants-Dodgers series ends differently. I think losing the biggest bat in their lineup almost completely doomed them. And the fact that they still pushed that series to 5 games and pushed it as hard as they did, that's why I don't think the Giants are going to regress as far as to the 90s. I still think they're going to be a 100 to 102 win team. And I think I'm going to stand by what I said. I think I'm going to keep them at first.
Yeah, I think if Belt's not hurt there, is Wilmer Flores up there in the bottom of the ninth? Or the top of the ninth?
God, I hope not. I just maybe it's just me. I don't want Wilmer Flores batting anywhere in the 9th inning.
Yeah,
no offense to Flores.
No, I just wonder if that would have made a difference. Belt being hurt, I think certainly I would agree did hurt them a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think the thing we need to keep an eye out on is, does Kapler learn from last year and the postseason? I know we had talked about that we were waiting for that Kapler drop-off in the second half of the season, which didn't come until he completely overmanaged in the postseason. So I think it's a matter of seeing what happens with Kapler here with another chance in that division. I think if he manages the way he did in the postseason, you're going to see that drop. I think if he does what he did throughout the regular season, I think they'll fight the Dodgers for the division. I don't think the talent is there, though. I think starting pitching wise, they're solid. I like Logan Webb. I think that was. I think he's definitely one of their best pitchers that they have. Descafani, Alex Wood, Alex Cobb, Tyler Beede. It's a little bit of a drop off there as you go down the list.
Yeah, it's definitely not as deep as the Dodgers. I think there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're going to end up falling behind, because I also don't know that their bullpen is as strong as the Dodgers. So I think that's the starting pitching and the relief pitching, and even a little of the outfield. I do like Mike Yastrzemski. I think you're going to see a drop off there from those 3 areas: the outfield, the starting pitching, and the relief pitching.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to see. And here's the thing, though. I mean, the one thing I was impressed with Gabe Kapler, ignoring the mismanagement of the offense in that series of the NLDS, the one thing Gabe Kapler finally seemed to have a grasp of last year was when to pull a starter and how to use your bullpen. And he never did that very well in Philly. From all of the years watching him, he never did that well. And that I will grant you, the quality of pitching he had was significantly better in San Francisco. Well, starters, you could argue that. Relievers, without a doubt, he had a much better bullpen to work with. But he didn't really make a ton of managerial errors when bringing in his bullpen and using his bullpen. And that's, compared to what he did in Philly, that's a huge step forward, I think.
Yeah, I think that was definitely a huge step forward for him. I mean, you're talking about the bullpens, which, yeah, but the thing is, you had a worse bullpen in Philly, and you were still pulling the starter after 5 innings because he was at 80 pitches. The starting pitching in Philly while he was there was not bad starting pitching. It was bad management. Nola was having a really good season when Kapler was there, but Nola didn't get the wins because Kapler would pull him out after 5 innings because he was at 75 pitches and the metrics and the analytics told him, hey, you should do this. And he was like, okay. He needs to make sure that he's not focusing solely on analytics like he did in Philly, which I think he did learn a little bit last year, that he needs to work with his gut. He needs to work with what he sees happening on the field. Because I remember I think it was opening day in Philly. Aaron Nola has like maybe a one-hit shutout, is in the 6th inning, has thrown like 40 pitches, and Kepler pulls him. And Phillies ended up losing the game when they were up, like they had like a 6-run lead or something like that. So I think as long as he gets away from strictly analytics, you'll see a difference.
If I remember right, that was against Atlanta, wasn't it? Yeah, I thought so. I remember that game because I was like, wait, Nola's gone. We have a chance. Yes. Literally my exact thought from that game. Why in the world, yeah. Anyway. All right, guys. Anything else for the Giants? All right. So Jason finally has submitted a list of names for consideration for his new show-only Twitter handle. And I'm going to throw these up on the Facebook page. We'll leave it up as a poll. Here are the options: at $DogsPod_Jason, at DDAB_Jason, at $DogsandJason, at Don't Go Jason Waterfalls, and at $DogsBeer_Jason. So these options will all be up there. Jason would like to say that his wife is not allowed to have any further influence on the pick for the name. Karen, if you want to tell me a good idea, I'll be happy to throw it up on the poll, but I can't promise you Jason will say yes if it's one of your picks. All right, guys. Anything else for tonight before we wrap? All right, Joe, you good? Jason, you good? I think Jason's battery just died. All right. So, guys, you can find us. The audio recordings are available on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Amazon Music, and Spreaker. You can see us live on our YouTube channel, on Facebook Live, and on Twitter. You can find our merchandise at redbubble.com/people/DDAB-podcast. Hey, Jason's back on the phone. Welcome back, buddy.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, my battery had died on the laptop, so I figured log in quickly here with the phone.
Well, welcome back. You can follow us on the Facebook page, facebook.com/$dogsandbeer, on the Twitter page at DDAB_podcast. Find us on Twitter. I'm at PyroLord314. Jason, for the last time, I hope, is at JRIEKER300. Joe's at JoltonJoe35. We are presented by Dark Arrow Podcast, LLC, and we are sponsored by Whiskey and Blade Barbershop in Lidditz. May your dogs always cost $1. May your beer always be cold. Have a good night, everyone.